Hi, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Irene. As usual, share, like, and subscribe. Today, I'm going to touch on the topic of pensions and how we can use pensions to inform our own personal investment decisions and generally educate on the landscape of pensions from a national and from a global perspective. Many people have pensions, and I think it's a fantastic way to get yourself informed on how the pension industry works and how pensions work in general, because it's one of the assets that you do have that can really give you a front row and insight into how the financial system works and how investments work. And then you can take some of those strategies and apply them into your own personal investment portfolio. Many people have pensions, many working employees have pensions. And for that reason, I believe it's your essential tool into understanding financial literacy. I'm just going to throw out a few statistics to give some context. And once I've done that, we can then continue. So when it comes to retirement age, there's 4 different areas where people tend to get their retirement income from, right? And 3 of those are pensions, okay? So you tend to have your own personal savings and investments. You can even have your real estate assets sitting within there. That's the first section. You've got your workplace pension, you've got your state pension, and then you've also got your private self-invested pension. So that just goes to show that with pensions occupying, 3/4 of that sort of square, it's a very important area to focus on, to truly understand before you can make your decisions as to whether or not you want to continue investing into your pension funds. Now, the global pension industry is actually quite large. It is valued at 62 trillion US dollars, roughly. And if you think about the S&P 500, the value of the S&P 500 is $57 trillion. So they're essentially almost at par, right? Which shows you the magnitude of the pension industry. Now, with that said, not all pensions are created equal, and not everybody from a global perspective is investing into their pension. So actually 1/3 of the global population is investing into their pension. And the interesting thing about this is that although 1/3 are investing into a pension, we also have what we call pension poverty, meaning that even with those investing into a pension, the amounts that they're investing are not sufficient to retain their lifestyle during retirement. And now we said there's 1/3 investing into pensions, which means 2/3 are not investing. Of the 1/3 that are investing, the amounts being invested are not sufficient. And we've just said that the value of the pension industry from a global perspective is roughly $62 trillion. So we can see that there's a significant scope within, a significant scope for growth in the pension industry. And what we're trying to do is get people to a level of pension literacy where they can really understand and appreciate the value of their pensions, what their pensions do, how pensions work, and how they sort of benefit the economy as well as your personal circumstances. And then we can get ourselves into a place where we are planning our retirements from a place of knowledge and from a place of empowerment, so we don't have to face the pension poverty challenges that are being talked about today. Now, how can your pension inform your personal investment strategy? So pensions are long-term investments, and think about a 20-year-old who's just started working and they're going to retire at 55. That's a long-term investment horizon, right? And so the approach for pension funds tends to be an income approach and a growth approach, right? So they're looking for investments that are going to generate income and also give that capital appreciation and growth of assets over time. The reason for this is that current pensioners who have retired or current members who are retirees will need income paid to them on a monthly basis to sustain their lifestyle during retirement. And then you've also got individuals who are active members who are actively paying into their pension fund, who require their assets to grow over time so that once they get to retirement age, they have a nice sort of chunky pension pot that they can begin to draw down from to sustain their lifestyle during retirement. The same thing with your personal investment portfolio. you might want to consider having long-term investments and some liquid assets, and potentially get, well, liquid assets, yes, and you also want to consider investments that pay you dividends on perhaps a regular basis or a frequent basis to be able to subsidize your income. The other thing that I can mention with regards to that long-term investment horizon is the fact that you do benefit significantly from compounding. So the earlier you start building your pension pot, then the more benefits you get from the compounding aspect of that, which means you're able to build a bigger pension pot quicker over time, right? Now, compounding is something that we've talked about even in the personal investments portfolio. So that's one for you to think about as well. You can learn and sort of see how your pension fund is doing that for you. So pension funds generally tend to have diversified portfolios because they want to maximize your opportunities for growing your retirement income. And for that reason, they will have asset diversification where they're investing across different asset classes. So they might have equities, bonds, real estate, the whole shebang, including cash in there. And they will also diversify from a geographical perspective because they want to, again, make the most of the returns that they're getting. So everything that I say today, translate that into your personal investment portfolio, look at what your pension fund is doing and try and pick up some of those strategies, really understand how they work from your pension, and then think about whether that is suited to your personal investment strategy as well. Now, next thing I want to discuss is this. The fact that a pension fund has what we call the Statement of Investment Principles. Well, the SIP covers a wide variety of items within it that are relevant to how the fund operates. The first thing, I'll just mention a few that will be linked to your personal investment strategy so you're not too overwhelmed with the information. So the SIP is essentially going to guide the investment strategy of the fund. It's going to guide the risk appetite of the fund in terms of, what percentage of assets they're, willing to invest in a particular asset class, the diversification of their portfolio, the returns that they're looking for from their investments, and essentially the goal of that pension fund. Which is why when you're looking at your personal portfolio, the first thing that you need to do as well is define your objectives. Why are you investing? Are you investing to get income? Are you investing to get growth? Are you investing for the short term? Are you investing for the long term? And then all these things will essentially determine your investment strategy. Once you've been able to do this, then it puts you in a position where you're not somebody who's constantly reacting to what the market is doing. Actually, you have a very level and balanced approach, and you're then able to stay in the market for a longer time and gain the benefits over that long-term investment horizon. So remember when we speak about pension funds having income or growth, the pension funds also get income from a different source. Now, you as a member, you contribute your income into the pension pot. Your employer also contributes income into the pension pot, right? So these funds are invested across different asset classes, and essentially they are used to manage the pension scheme over time. So you could then potentially argue that your pension fund is using what we call the dollar cost or the pound cost averaging method, where they get income every single month and then they proceed to invest it into the stock market, which is the same thing that you would do with your own personal portfolio. You would continuously invest over the life of your investment journey. Now, think about a pension fund just ceasing to invest in the market. That just means that they're not a pension fund that is looking to grow significantly, right? You might have a pension fund that is considered to be closed, which means all the members in that fund are perhaps part of the retirement crew, or they have been moved into a different pot where they're making more contributions in there. So the point of this closed fund is essentially to manage and sustain the value of that portfolio and allow it to grow to meet certain objectives. If you're not feeding any more cash into it or any more funding into it, essentially, there's only so far it can grow, right? And so because when the fund is active, they continue to trickle in the payments over time. It means that they're looking for that fund to grow to be able to accommodate the increase in the number of members and different statistics around retirement age for the members in the scheme and those who have already retired. Well, I have this conversation today because what I'm trying to drive at is that pensions are a very important tool. The levels of financial literacy are very low across the globe. The levels of pension literacy are low as well, even lower in comparison to financial literacy. So people have been asked the question, like, do you consider yourself to be financially literate? And they go ahead and say yes. When you ask specific questions about pensions, simple basic questions, and this is not even being judgmental of anybody, it just means the information was never, taught to us. And now we have the opportunity where we can begin to learn. People will say, I am pension or financially literate. But then when it comes to answering those simple questions, then the answers being provided are sort of leaning towards a lack of adequate financial education. So my encouragement to you today is to perhaps just go and look at your pension fund. Look at the statement of investment principles. You don't have to read it in too much detail. Just read the first paragraph and see what it says. Look at your pension scheme, understand what type of pension scheme you're invested in. Look at what the sort of returns are or the required returns are according to the statement of investment principles, because they tend to have a target around, say, we're looking for a 10% return on this investment portfolio. And the reason for that is because based on that number and the income that they're expecting to get into the fund, they can then project that they can satisfy the pension requirements for different pensioners in the future and the active members in the future and the current pensioners as well. Now, because we've spoken about pension poverty, it just goes to show that paying into a pension does not guarantee that you're going to have sufficient income for your retirement. That's something that we really need to be mindful of and we really need to begin to strategize about. So as much as employees are paying into their pension schemes, a lot of them are saying that they're going to depend on jobs when they retire, or they're hoping for some sort of inheritance to come their way when they get to retirement age. And that's how they plan to survive through their pension years. Now, if you're somebody who's looking forward to retirement, I can almost certainly guarantee that the jobs that you want to do are not jobs that you're doing because you have to. They're more jobs that you're doing because it's a choice for you. You want to stay active. You want to keep contributing to the community. You just want to keep yourself busy. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you're now having to work to sustain your living at an old age. So the earlier you begin to engage with your pension, the more likely you're putting yourself in a position where you can avoid that pension poverty trap, right? And as I've said, there's 4 different quadrants that you can sort of utilize to be able to earn a sustainable pension. Don't only rely on your pension from your employment. You can max out your pension contributions if you so chose to. Like the UK has different rules around that. You can look into it. You can increase your pension contributions to, I believe, roughly 60k as it is today, but those numbers might change. You can put some of that into your private pension. There's also the state pension coming up, and there's also your personal investments, like that you make through your ISA. You've also got different assets that you might acquire over your lifetime. And remember that in the UK, we're kind of living in an age where being taxed is becoming the norm. So factor that in as you're trying to think about how much income you require to have a sustainable or comfortable retirement, and eventually begin to plan for that as early as possible. So throughout this pension literacy series, which is what I'm calling it, I will be touching on different elements of pensions because the information is very wide. And I want to make sure that I give you guys as much information as possible to help you make that decision and essentially empower you with the information and other resources that will support you through this journey. So if you find this to be very useful content to you, give us a like, give us a comment, share, subscribe, ask any questions that you might have as well, invite your friends, let's get the conversation going. And the more questions that I get from you guys, the more I'll be able to understand how to direct the future conversations. Although I have like a whole list of topics that I want to push through to be able to support you guys in this journey. So thank you very much for joining me today, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.